we're going to be taking a tour of the cell. The purpose of this is to remind you about the parts of the cell you already know about and to help you see how information stored in the nucleus influences the products of the cell and even events outside the cell. So we're going to be starting inside the nucleus and working our way out along the pathway of the DNA and the proteins that are produced. We need to know first about the cell membrane. There's a membrane surrounding the cell. Its purpose is to protect the cell. It keeps the inside in and the outside out, and so that's how the inside of the cell can be different than the outside. Imagine this being sort of like your skin. It protects you from the outside world. The membrane is made of something called a phospholipid bilayer. See these little yellow guys? These are lipids, top and bottom, and just like oil and water don't mix, it keeps things that mix with water from passing through to the inside of the cell. That's how the cell separates itself from the outside world, is by this phospholipid bilayer. We're going to remember this because there are other things in the cell that also are surrounded by this membrane to make them individual portions. In the very inside of the cell, we have the command center, or the control point, whatever you want to call it, the nucleus of the cell. The purpose of the nucleus is to store the DNA. What I want to point out to you is that this is like a cutaway view of the nucleus. See these holes? These are called nuclear pores. When information travels in and out of the nucleus, it goes through the nuclear pores, so they're sort of like doors, and the DNA is protected inside. It's very important to protect your DNA from damage. That's how we get diseases like cancer, if your DNA is damaged. DNA, which we're going to study more of later, is the molecule that stores information for all cellular functions, and what that really means is all body functions. A gene is a segment of DNA that codes for a protein. Proteins do everything in our body. They make the color of our eyes, they make up our muscles, they make up the hormones that carry information around our body. They do the tasks in the body. They're like little tiny machines sometimes. So having DNA, which is instructions to build a protein, is instructions to run your body and to look like who you are. We're going to be studying much more about genes and how they determine your traits and the function of your body during the course of this unit. In order for information to get out of the nucleus, the genes need to be copied into a form called RNA, and we will study more of this later, and the RNA leaves the nucleus through the nuclear pores. The DNA never leaves. It's always inside. It's stored there. It can't get out. It's got to be protected. The ribosomes are small organelles, that's like a mini organ, made of protein, so there's that protein again. The purpose of the ribosome is to read the instructions in the RNA, this thing that looks like a comb, that's actually representing the RNA going into the middle of the ribosome, and the ribosome is reading the instructions on the RNA and building a protein. These little blobs are supposed to represent the pieces of the protein being manufactured. The endoplasmic reticulum is a membrane compartment, so it's made of a membrane attached to the nucleus. Here is a cutaway piece of the nucleus. Here are these compartments traveling away from the nucleus, and look, they're all interconnected by the pores. So the whole thing is sort of like one big folded up membrane with different purposes and different parts. We have two parts to the endoplasmic reticulum. We're just going to call it the ER because that's easier to say. The rough ER has ribosomes attached to it. Here we can see the pieces of the ER, and all those little dots represent ribosomes. The ribosomes use the RNA from the nucleus to manufacture a protein, and they release the protein into the inside of the endoplasmic reticulum. So it's not floating around loose in the cell, it's contained inside the ER. The smooth ER is later, so the rough ER is closer to the nucleus, the smooth ER is further from the nucleus. It's smooth, so it has no ribosomes. That means it does not make proteins. Instead, it makes lipids, which is the science word for fats, because we need fats as well. So this is like the big manufacturing center of the cell, the ER. At the very end of the ER, we have the Golgi body, or the Golgi apparatus, if you like fancy words. Again, it's made out of membrane, and it packages the products of the ER into small packages. We call these vesicles. Okay, so see, we've got vesicles incoming, comes to the Golgi apparatus, it's packaged, and these little bubble things are actually little, imagine it like a little water balloon, and inside is the product that the endoplasmic reticulum made, the Golgi body has packaged it into this little balloon to send it somewhere. A vesicle can be expelled to the outside of the cell called secretion. So maybe the cell is making something that needs to go into the bloodstream to travel to another part of the body. It would go to the outside of the cell. All right, see this vesicle is going to the outside. Maybe it's making mucus. So there's genes that tell your body how to make mucus. Mucus is made inside your nose cells, and then it's expelled to the outside of the nose cell, which is the inside of your nose, and you get all stuffed up. That's a vesicle transporting mucus through the cell to the outside of the cell to get into your nose, so you need to blow your nose. They can also be stored within the cell, and they can travel to other parts of the cell. So this is like a nice, safely packaged way to carry stuff around. Like you're going to carry a snack with you. You put it in a little Ziploc bag. You don't just throw a handful of food in your pocket, right? You put it in a baggie or something to carry it. That's what a vesicle does. Okay, now the mitochondria are not part of that chain of protein production, starting at the nucleus and ending at the vesicles that we saw. But they're very, very important because they're the organelles which produce energy in every cell. If you don't have mitochondria, you have no energy. Your body can't do all these protein building functions without energy. So the mitochondria are really important. We see they're made of a double layer of membrane, this one around the outside that's shaped like a capsule, and then this folded one on the inside, and it lets a lot of complex chemistry take place that makes energy. This is where all that sugar that you eat that makes you hyper, it's burned in your mitochondria to make energy. Mitochondria are really interesting because they have their own DNA separate from our own. That's like a whole nother branch of science is looking at mitochondrial DNA, so we won't go into that right now. Finally, we have chloroplasts. These are specialized organelles that are found only in plants. They're responsible for making plants green. These are the organelles that use sunlight to create sugar. That's how plants make their own energy. The chloroplasts use sunlight to create sugar, and then we eat the plant and think it's delicious, and so we steal their energy. All right, so that is the very basic introduction to the parts of the cell. You're going to be doing a project which is going to take you further into this, but this is a good basic introduction.